with that, we'll get started. Our speaker is Charisse Bordeaux, Programs Manager for the Utah Society for Environmental Education. Before she joined UC, she worked in youth programming for 5 years, where she facilitated classes in environmental sustainability and outdoor recreation. In addition to managing UC's professional development program, Charisse also facilitates professional development workshops and manages projects associated with grants for UC. And I'll turn the time over to you, Charisse. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Rose, for that introduction. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Rose mentioned, I am the programs manager for UC, and I have been with UC for the past 3 years, where previously I worked in youth programming, and I work in youth programming for students with learning and behavioral disorders, as well as after school and summer programs. And so that highly influences the work that I do now. I did environmental sustainability courses for U City at Ottinger Hall, and I also did a lot of outdoor recreation prior to joining UC. So my goal today is to identify 3 quick tips for engaging your students, as well as present Project Learning Tree as a resource for education outreach activities. And hopefully, if I achieve that goal, I will feel like this towards the end of the presentation. So moving on to the next slide. So generally for classroom presentations or classroom visits or education outreach, you want to know your purpose. So first, we're going to talk about knowing your purpose. I'm going to discuss 3 quick tips, and last we will look at a PLT activity for a classroom visit. So again, why are you there? Knowing your purpose. Why are you there to do that presentation or to do that education outreach? Are you there to increase knowledge? For example, teach 4th graders how to identify trees in their schoolyard, encourage behavior, encourage students to care for trees within their neighborhood or to volunteer for tree planting organizations, or maybe you just want to create a meaningful experience. Establishing your purpose will influence your presentation and your delivery method, so it is important for you to first understand the nature of your visit. Typically, when doing classroom visits, you were either requested by the teacher or your agency is visiting classrooms for education outreach efforts, or maybe they're coming to you for a particular topic. Whether you are there by request or not, it is always beneficial to tailor your presentation to what is being taught in the classroom. Teachers will love it, and I personally believe that students will be able to comprehend your message more effectively when they are able to connect it to something they are already learning. When doing a classroom visit, simply ask the teacher if your topic relates to anything they are currently studying, or you can also look at the Utah State Core Standards for Education to see if your subject is relevant to learning objectives for this grade. So what are the Utah State Core Standards? As defined by the Utah State Office of Education, Utah State Core Standards are meant to ensure academic achievement for Utah students by defining the essential knowledge, concepts, and skills to be mastered at each grade level or within critical content areas. So ultimately, they define what students should know and do to be ready for post-high school jobs and schooling. So here's what they look like. You have Standard 5, which states students will understand the physical characteristics of Utah's wetlands, forests, and deserts, and identify common organisms for each environment. You have the objective, which this one shows objective 1, and then you have descriptions below those labeled as A, B, C, D, and E. So this core standard here correlates with an activity that I'm going to be discussing later in the presentation. But I wanted to introduce this to you guys so you understand how what you do relates to the classroom and how you can connect those two and make that clear for educators who want to utilize your expertise to enhance their curriculum and their teaching in the classroom. So now for the tips. After I share some tips for engaging students, then I will discuss an activity from the PLT guide as a resource for hands-on activities. So whether you are sharing information or encouraging behavior change, it doesn't have to take place in a lecture style format. Feel free to explore creative ways to deliver your message. And here are 3 quick tips to engage your audience when visiting classrooms. Know your audience, know your personality type, and have clear communication with the teacher. So here's for tip number 1. Know your audience. The age of the students you visit will not only affect the type of information you present, but it will also influence the way in which you deliver it. So you want to make sure that your information is age appropriate and your delivery of that information is age appropriate. When looking at age appropriate information, you want to make sure that it's not too complex because students may, of course, become bored or confused. They may also grow bored if it is too simple. So just make sure you are aware that the information you are presenting is age appropriate. Also, going back to what I mentioned before about connecting this to what the students are learning in class or connecting it to the core, the Utah State core, this will help in presenting age-appropriate information because in nature, that is what the core standards were designed to do. So it's a good way to guide what information you are presenting to various age groups. You also want to think about the age appropriate, that the delivery of your information is age appropriate. Think about the delivery, especially those who present to a wide range in age. For example, you may have sing-alongs for your presentation, and it might be a really fun way to help students understand the concepts that you're trying to communicate while engaging with them. Elementary school students may very much enjoy this, but perhaps some high school kids may not enjoy it the same way. When in doubt, feel free to ask the teacher ahead of time if their students would enjoy a sing-along activity. You never know, Glee is a smash right now, and singing in groups may be all the rage at high schools. But just to make sure, it's really nice to run that idea by the teachers. They know their students the best. Some high school kids may enjoy it, some may not. Some middle school age kids may enjoy it, some may not. And it's also really important when you're thinking about different types of learners. If you have any special needs kids in the classroom that you're visiting, sometimes certain sounds or things could be sensitive for those students. So you want to make sure that you clarify that with the teacher ahead of time. Okay, so moving on to quick tip number 2. Know your personality type. I mean this in relation to your presentation style. Some people are animated and some people are not. That was Tigger who bounced off the page. There we go. Oh, he's gone. But and some people are not. Some of us may be that person who is great at connecting with the students, making them laugh, and at the same time achieve the purpose of sharing information. But some of us may connect with the students differently. And I'm not saying that one personality type is Eeyore and the other is Tigger. I'm just using those characters as a contrast. But once we recognize our personality types and how they influence our presentation style, we can identify ways to engage the students that is comfortable, natural, and effective for us as an individual, and have fun and still achieve our purpose. So find ways to integrate your personality and individuality into your presentation. It's a great way for the students to connect with you, and if they can connect with you, they are more likely to be engaged. Okay, so now for tip number 3. After tip number 3, we'll look at some hands-on activities to teach a specific topic. So be sure to think about how this activity will not only suit your purpose for education outreach, but how you can make it unique to your presentation style. So communicate with the teacher. Make sure you have communicated your purpose to the teacher and what you need from the teacher to achieve this purpose. For example, my presentation is intended to introduce students to tree identification, and I need time to take the students outside to look at the schoolyard trees. This may help you identify any barriers you may encounter and prevent you from engaging your students. Also, you can also send information about what you're presenting ahead of time to give the students background on the subject. The more familiar they are with what you are talking about, the more engaged they will be. So we will be looking at a hands-on activity using PLT. So a little bit about PLT. It uses the forest as a window on the world to increase students' understanding of our environment, stimulate students' critical and creative thinking, develop students' ability to make informed decisions on environmental issues, and instill in students the commitment to take responsible action on behalf of the environment. PLT has several curriculum guides, one of which is PLT's activity guide for grades K through 8. The activity we will be looking at comes from this guide. So just to give you guys an idea of how the activities are laid out in the guide, this is what they look like. So you can see that it has a summary at the beginning, it has objectives, background, assessment opportunities, and then the box on the side gives you detailed information that you would need or be looking for when facilitating an activity. Here's a close-up view. So as I mentioned to the left, you have the grade levels, which are really important, especially when thinking about age-appropriate information. You have the subjects, and this is great for connecting it to the core, as we mentioned. So this one is specific to science and social studies. It also outlines concepts that are relevant to this activity, and it gives you information, if you look lower down in that column, about materials, so things that you will need, as well as time considerations, which is really important when doing classroom presentations or having classrooms come and visit you. So during a 4-hour workshop, here's actually an also closer view of the activity, which is really great about PLT activities, is that they walk you through step by step, and you can modify these activities to suit your purpose and your needs when wanting to communicate a certain specific concept or subject or topic to a group of students. This will walk you through how to do that, but you can also tailor it to suit your presentation style. So during a 4-hour workshop, which we would normally conduct, I would model one of these activities, and you would be able to observe how this activity is presented in a classroom setting. So due to our limitations in time and participation in that capacity, I will identify key elements that make this a useful activity for engaging students for classroom visits, as well as how PLT turns tree identification into a hands-on activity. So the activity we will be discussing is name that tree activity 68. So just a summary of it. Trees can be identified by looking at several different features: leaves, bark, twigs, flowers, fruits, and seeds. Even the overall shape of a tree can give clues to the tree's identity. In this activity, students will learn more about trees through these identifying features. And then afterward, they can play an active game that tests their knowledge of different types of trees. So the objective of this activity is that students will identify several trees using various physical characteristics. If you recall, looking at the core standards, this is one of those indicators that let us know that it's connected to those core standards, or what a teacher would be looking for to fulfill a curriculum need while teaching. And the subjects for this specific activity that we're looking at connects with science and physical education, and it's applicable for grades 2nd through 8th. So this is a good activity that you can do with a wide range and age of students. So key elements of this activity are inquiry-based, and inquiry-based is mainly involving the learner and leading him or her to understand by using questions. This activity is active, and it's hands-on. So these are key elements for a good activity that you can use to engage students when trying to communicate a specific topic. So I'm going to read the activity as it is listed in the book. As I read the instructions, I want you all to look for each of these key elements I just identified. And remember what we talked about with personality types. Think about how you would present this activity in a way that suits your teaching style. So again, those key elements are inquiry-based, meaning you lead the students with questions to come to the answer. They're active and they're hands-on. Okay, so with the activity, what you would do before, as I mentioned, PLT outlines steps that you need to take to properly facilitate this activity. So you have preparation. You need to look at what materials you need and what your time considerations are. And then for this specific activity, since we're going to be doing tree identification, you want to scope out the vicinity that you're going to be facilitating this activity and make sure you identify at least 7 to 10 trees in that vicinity. And since most of you are arborists or forestry professionals, that's probably going to be a lot easier for you than I. So after identifying the trees, you'll need to create a tree identification sheet for the students to use. And on the second sheet, you create clues. So clues that might describe the tree's bark and the shape of the tree, for example. And then your final preparation would be collecting twigs or small branches from 2 to 4 different trees. The twigs should be long enough to show several leaves. If possible, use twigs that have already fallen to the ground or have been pruned. But try to collect twigs from both needle and broadleaf trees. So, in doing the activity, you're going to start off again with that inquiry base. Ask students what characteristics they might use to identify trees. As they give their ideas, ask how they could use these characteristics to identify trees. If you have a board, record the students' answers on the board, or you can just reference them as you go about. Next, you're going to hold up the branch you collected earlier or pass them around. Have students examine and compare them. Can students suggest any other ways they might be able to tell the trees apart? So you're engaging with the students as well with these questions. Next, you're going to use background information. As I mentioned in the previous slide, these activities give you background information to help you facilitate this activity. So you're going to give background information to discuss ways people identify trees. Be sure to go over leaf characteristics such as leaf bases, tips, leaf margins, edges, simple and compound leaves, etc. And then next you want to divide the group into teams of 2 or 3 and give each student a copy of both sheets that I mentioned earlier for them to participate in the activity. Tell teams that they will use trees on the school property to match the drawings and names on sheet 1 with the tree descriptions on sheet 2. Explain that first the students must find a tree whose leaves match the leaves on sheet 1. Then by examining the tree closely and comparing their observations with the clues on sheet 2, they should be able to find a match. As they match tree characteristics with tree leaves and names, they should write the tree's names on the line below the clues. Invite students outside and let them get to work. And then of course it has some things that you want to give the students ahead of time, like setting perimeters depending on what environment you are facilitating this activity. And then when you go back inside, go over the sheets as a group, which team made the most correct identifications. So that's one variation of the activity that you could do with the students. The next is a little bit more active, and they call this activity a leaf hunt relay. So as I read through these activities, don't be concerned in recording all the steps that I'm giving you. This is just to give you an idea of how you could use a PLT activity and transform that, translate that in a way that you can utilize that as a tool and resource in the classroom for a classroom visit. So divide the group into teams and have each team collect 3 leaves from each of the trees identified in Part A. Take the students to an open area and explain that they will have a relay race. Line them up in their teams and place each team's leaf pile a set distance in front of each team. Tell the students that you're going to call out the name of a tree, and then you say go. After the signal to go, the first student in each team should run to the pile of leaves, find the leaf that comes from the tree you named, and hold it up. Each team gets 1 point for each leaf correctly identified. The team with the most points wins. So after each round, put the leaves back in the piles and ask the players to go to the end of their team's line. So that activity is within time considerations. It could be 60 minutes to a half an hour, depending on what modifications that you've had, and it had all three of the key elements. We were teaching the students about tree identification, but we were engaging them by asking them questions and having a dialogue with them. It was also hands-on because we were giving them branches and trees to hold as we were discussing how to properly identify trees. And it was also active. You can turn a lot of things into games, and it's a really innovative and great strategy for engaging students and enhancing the information, your delivery, and the information that you're trying to communicate with your students. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the webinar and learned some new tips and tricks for classroom presentations. We have, as far as some of our resources go, we have upcoming workshops that dive into these in more depth with best practices for teaching or doing environmental education and engaging students when doing classroom presentations or when classrooms are coming to visit your facility. Tree Utah also does these workshops for forestry professionals and resource managers. And I talked a lot about the Utah core standards, and so there's a link for you to go and look at those core standards and find ways that those core standards are connected with what you are doing. And feel free to contact us at any time for any consultation for classroom activities or education outreach efforts. And I also want to open this up for questions, for any questions or things that you guys want to ask me in terms of maybe your challenges and barriers in engaging students for classroom visits, or just generally any questions about environmental education. Thank you.
All right, Cherise, thank you for that presentation. So for those of you who are in attendance, go ahead and type any questions you have for Cherise into the chat pod, and I'll act as a moderator. We've got one question for you, Cherise. How do people get involved with Project Learning Tree, and can they have access to a few activities?
So to get involved with the Project Learning Tree activities, you have to take a workshop. The guide is pretty extensive, and so they like to show people how to go over those activities. I modeled or discuss how you can read the activities in the book, but the book has a lot of great appendices and indices to show you how to connect this to other subjects, interdisciplinary subjects, as well as best practices in environmental education. So that's all incorporated in the workshop. But as far as just getting activities to do education outreach, UC has many activities and ideas and resources that you can use if you're looking to enhance your education outreach efforts, and we would be more than happy to give consultation on that. But to get a workshop for PLT, all they have to do is look on our website to see when workshops are available, or contact us directly and we could do a workshop for you at your organization or for your staff members.
We've got a question here. Can you provide more information on where we can obtain age-appropriate information?
Yeah, so age-appropriate information, I can send some links, but if you generally look for cognitive development for a specific age group, you can find where students are at cognitively. So not as far as, like, the Utah core standards can give you information as far as what subjects to discuss at a certain age, but if you want to understand where they are at cognitively and what they're able to maybe like their attention span, and for cognitive development, you can look on some child resource sites and UEN as well.
We've got another question here from a Project Learning Tree veteran. Vern says he's been through the PLT training 20 years ago but no longer has a guide. How can he acquire one?
We have guides at our office, so you can just give us a call or send us an email, and you can order one, and we can set you up with a guide. And it's great to see somebody who's been in PLT 20 years ago. That's really exciting. It's only been 3 years for me.
Great. And Meredith has a comment. She says that UC has partnered with Tree Utah to offer some PLT workshops specifically tailored to resource professionals. So that would be you who are in attendance. My question was, what are some common obstacles that you have noticed that resource professionals have to overcome when they're going from their area of expertise to the classroom?
Some common obstacles. Well, I'm not a resource professional, and I haven't worked with resource professionals specifically for education outreach. But I think generally when doing classroom visits, it's a struggle to translate this complex information in a way that is suitable for, elementary school kids or even high school kids. And generally if you don't work with students on an everyday basis, it's hard to find creative ways to engage them and capture their attention consistently. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you have to know your purpose. If your purpose is intended to increase knowledge, then you're going to have to change your presentation style if you really want the students to walk away with, this is how you identify trees, and this is this is how you plant a tree, step A, B, and C. Or if your purpose is to change behavior, your presentation style is also going to change. You might want to do a game that demonstrates that behavior. For instance, what we did, and showing you how to identify trees and how to look at certain indicators that will help you identify that tree. So I think just in general, when you are trying to engage students, there's a lot of things you want to consider in preparation for why you're doing it and what you're trying to do when working with students.
Great answer. We have another question regarding arborists who visit entire schools with a wide age range and who might present in an assembly style situation where there's not access to the outdoors. What do you suggest for this type of event?
So I think that's really important in knowing your personality type that I discussed. When you're doing those large auditorium presentations, you definitely want somebody who projects their voice, who understands how pitch, tone, and variation can really influence the way that you engage your audience and captivate them without having to do too much, if that makes sense. So you want to know what type of person you are and if you're suitable for that job, because you are having to capture a lot of people's attention and standing up there by yourself. So if you're not that type of person who's the bouncy jokester, jumping all over the place, can have that variation in pitch tone, then you can integrate other tools that can help fulfill that purpose and help engage the students and help them be excited and have a fun, meaningful experience while you're there. So again, doing things that are hands-on, walking through the aisles, or finding ways that you're not so disengaged from the students, being up on a stage versus being right there in the audience with the kids. So I mean, there's many, a lot of it's circumstantial, again, in what the auditorium looks like and what message you're trying to deliver, but you definitely want to be prepared, and you definitely want to consider what your personality type is, what information you're trying to deliver, and what is your purpose. Maybe if your purpose is just to have those kids connect with a resource professional and have a meaningful experience, then that's great, and that's what you go for, and that's what you try to accomplish while you're there, instead of making sure that all of those 200 kids that you're presenting for in front of you walk away knowing how to identify a tree. Maybe it's just to see how cool industry professionals are. So those are just some things that you want to consider when looking at when presenting in a large auditorium format like that. And it's and those things are what you would do step by step in developing your presentation specifically for an auditorium style presentation.
Another great answer. We have a question here from an arborist. Do you have any suggestions concerning school groups that visit the arborist on site, or scouts or other groups that would come to visit an arborist on?
So, yeah, so suggestions for Boy Scouts that visit you, definitely knowing their programs. I think it's similar for formal educators when we look at the core standards to see what they're trying to achieve, what concepts, what things are they learning right now in their class. The same things with Scouts, knowing what are they working on right now in Scouts, what badge are they earning, and trying to find some ways prior to that to connect it with whatever message that you're trying to deliver. So I know we're not just generally trying to teach people about trees or generally trying to teach people about water conservation. We might be talking about trees, but more specifically we want people to understand what invasive species do to certain trees, or how to take care of trees. And so you want to focus on your message that you're trying to deliver to these school groups, but then it's kind of twofold, also seeing how that message relates specifically to them. So that's a better way to engage those students when they come and visit you. Also, a lot of times with those presentations, it's one-time presentations, right? It's you're just seeing those kids coming in and out, so you want to find ways to connect with them. And when I used to, I was a naturalist guide for the Nature Conservancy, and we just have school groups coming in and out, almost every day when we would do those guides. And so I like to do introductory activities with the kids, or icebreaker activities with the kids, to get to know their names and for them to get a sense of my personality type and what type of person I am as I am guiding them through this experience.
We have another question about hands-on activities and tangible things for educating kids. Does UC offer toolkits or other stuff that people can check out for their presentations?
We don't have such like toolkits, but we have things like tree cookies. We have like reading materials that connect to a wide range of educational environmental educational concepts and topics. But most importantly is that UC is a member organization, and we have institutional members, just a variety of institutional members with every environmental education entity in the state of Utah. And so we can connect you with those individuals who do have toolkits. Like the Hogle Zoo has great wildlife resource toolkits and materials that you can use. The Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge has toolkits for you to check out. And so we can, if you shoot us an email with what specifically you're looking for, we can give you a variety of contacts that you can obtain those types of toolkits to enhance your presentations, because it is great to have those hands-on activities. And I always suggest never reinventing the wheel, because there are so many great environmental education organizations here who have created things like that. I would say with certainty you'd be able to find something specifically for what you're looking for. So yeah, give us a call or shoot us an email and we can connect you with that.
Oh, it looks like we have another question. What are some of your favorite tree activities for kids?
Oh, I did the Name That Tree activity because I did like all of those aspects. I feel like when you're doing classroom presentations, or when you're doing education outreach in general, whether the classes are coming to you or you're going to them, you're not the classroom, you're not the teacher, and you have an opportunity to be the fun person. Not saying that teachers aren't fun, or teaching in classrooms not fun, but it's something that they experience every day. So this is something to do the opportunity to do something out of the box. And so that's what I like the name That Tree activity, is because it's active. It gets kids out of the classroom. It gets them moving around, and it also is a great way to have them walking away with something new that they learned. My other favorite activity, though, is We All Need Trees. And that's another PLT activity. And what that does is it demonstrates how almost everything we use comes from trees. And it's another great hands-on, tactile type of activity where really quickly what you could do is simplify this activity to lay out 3 objects: rubber gloves, a t-shirt made out of rayon, and then carpet. And then you ask the students if those come from trees, and some might say yes, this part does, or no, it doesn't. But you get to engage in a conversation and dialogue about what parts of the trees those specific materials come from, and then you can relate it to a bigger picture of how much of the things that we use every day comes from trees. And so I think that's a great activity because, again, it's hands-on, but it also builds on a larger picture of how we're dependent on resources in our everyday life.
Who is the Project Learning Tree coordinator in Utah now, and what agency or organization hosts them?
That's a good question. It's the Utah Society for Environmental Education, who I work for, and Andrea Walker-Bravo and myself are the PLT coordinators. I'm sorry, I did forget to mention one thing too. So for support for that program does come from Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. So they've been a major supporter of that program and who's been able to support that program throughout the years, where we are able around times like the Arbor Day to offer free workshops to teachers.
Very good. All right, well, thank you again.